I'm Corinne Cavanaugh, and you're listening to Lightning Speed, the podcast where marketing leaders who engineered revenue growth at Fortune 500 companies share the blueprints that help small and mid-sized businesses grow quickly. Today, you're going to hear the best advice from Rachel Wilkie, a direct-to-consumer and e-commerce chief marketing officer who owned a $300 million P&L at MAC Cosmetics, part of Estee Lauder, and a $110 million P&L at Merrell. She has replatformed over 300 businesses to Shopify. She knows how to move in e-commerce at scale. I'm talking running 40 A/B tests simultaneously while leading those teams and campaigns. If you're running a direct-to-consumer or e-commerce business and you are ready to build a performance engine that scales, Rachel is your person. She takes on select clients fractionally at CIC Media. Here's what I love about Rachel. She came up through the ranks in performance marketing, and then she grew up by having P&L responsibility. She knows exactly what every dollar in and every dollar out means to margin and EBITDA, and that influences every decision she makes. In this episode, Rachel breaks down why P&L ownership is the unlock most CMOs are missing, what D2C brands can learn from legacy brands about partnerships, and how she achieved massive results through smart performance marketing and e-commerce optimization. We're talking 300% ROAS. This one is for every D2C founder who knows their product is great and is ready for a flood of buyers. Let's go. What's the number one decision you make differently when you're accountable for both revenue and margin, not just top line growth?
Oh, this is such a great question. And I think so many companies get this wrong at the executive leadership level, where it is just a push on revenue at all costs. And what does it take to push revenue? Spend. Spend, margin attrition, and that is directly against profit. So it is such a push and pull with trying to balance those two things. And I really think that every CMO should be in the position where they're accountable for a P&L so that they understand the impact of the dollars that are going out and how that flows all the way through to contribution margin and EBITDA. So I think that that's a really unique part of my experience is that I grew up in e-commerce. I grew up on a P&L, and then, of course, like I learned over time how important brand is and how important how we position the product to the consumer and in the market is. So that was something I learned secondary, but having that focus on the P&L and seeing the impact of marketing spend to the bottom line gives you a lot of different insights on how you should spend your dollars. I think attribution is really important in understanding not just last click with GA4, but like also where are customers learning about you? Where are they discovering your brand? And asking post-purchase questions is such a great way to understand where your existing consumers are coming from without relying on just the GA4 last click or some of these other attribution tools. So hearing directly from the customer, I think is a great way for you to understand how to spend your dollars. But overall, I would say I do prioritize different things depending on the needs of the company. So we might be in a season where it's revenue at all costs. That's really important goal and objective for the board or for other stakeholders. And so then we might flex up our marketing as percent of total, or other times it might be profit. And so you start to dial down your spend a bit and tighten things to like the most ROAS efficient. So I would say it really depends on the needs of the business at the time. But having clear objectives from leadership is super important to be able to make decisions along the way.
You managed a $27 million digital marketing budget at Merrell, and you achieved 300% ROAS. Most direct-to-consumer brands are celebrating at like 100%, 150, 200%. What's the one thing most e-commerce CMOs or leadership teams are doing with paid media that's leaving all of these ROAS percentage points on the table?
So many teams treat it like it's super precious. Like, oh, this is the first impression people have of our brand. It has to be on point. But I think one thing that TikTok has taught us is that Sometimes a first impression, like controversial even, brings a consumer in for more questions or like curiosity, and then you kind of get them hooked, and then the experience they have after that is what keeps them coming back. So I think that this like precious, this is how I want it to look, it has to be perfect, really thwarts your opportunity to scale profitably, especially in Meta. Meta is a beast to feed the creative engine. I think figuring out creative automation, templates, it's so easy actually to get a whole MCP agent going to fill in templates with assets, for example. And I think that that is the way to manage those platforms now. And it's becoming increasingly difficult because, of course, with vibe coding and all of the new AI technology, people are launching e-commerce sites left and right. So it's gotten very competitive, and you need diversity in content to reach different consumer groups. And Meta rewards that, highly rewards that. So I would just really encourage CMOs and creative directors to let a little bit of the guardrails down so that you can scale with diversity. And also you can learn and then adapt new formats or remove formats. It's such an agile thing that if you're too precious, it will really cost a lot of opportunity. That would be the number one thing I would say.
You just spoke about lifetime value and, customers going down the drain. It's a problem for every type of company, especially in direct to consumer. But you've built a retention ecosystem, including SMS, segmentation, bundles that became core revenue streams. So tell us, what's the retention tactic that delivers the fastest ROI that most direct-to-consumer brands haven't implemented yet?
This is something that I've been talking to clients and brands about for over a decade. It's crazy how fast or how slow this whole process has been in companies adopting it. But really, most brands think about retention in terms of like sending more communications and making sure that you're constantly top of mind. But it's not. It's actually about sending fewer messages with higher intent. So, how can you make sure that every communication with your customer is relevant to them and not flood them with too many communications or things that they're frankly not interested in? And this is a very difficult thing for organizations to do because you have to really have templatization, and you have to have ruthless prioritization of what the categories are that are most important to your consumer. And without those like two things, it's so difficult for lean teams. Everyone's working on lean teams right now. I mean, I've never seen the market like trying to squeeze more out of less than
Yep,
we see in
for sure.
2026. But how you actually get it across the finish line is really difficult. Like the templatization and the prioritization of messages and like creating an asset engine that can support that level of communication is really where the key is. And if you can't figure that out, then you'll never be able to accomplish the level of segmentation that you need to.
You replatformed Shopify and launched an in-house CRO engine in under 6 months. Most companies take 12 to 18 months and millions of dollars to do something like that. So tell us your secret sauce. What did you cut, ignore, or do differently?
That's a really interesting way to phrase the question. What do you cut, ignore? A lot of platforms fail because they're trying to preserve decisions made in prior platforms. And that is hands down. I've replatformed probably over 300 businesses because the first part of my career was all spent on e-com platforming. And just trying to maintain the functionality that something once had is crippling. I think the more important question is, what do you need on the new site? And like, what are the problems you're trying to solve for the consumer? A lot of times, my clients and in some of these platform transitions, people are focused on, this is what I want to see on the website, what I want the consumer experience to be. But you need to back up and say, like, how is this benefiting the customer, and strip down to an MVP. So that's super critical. And so we did that with Rifle and several other Shopify replatforms. I just actually finished one where it was like, what do we absolutely need for the consumer? Let's get there on Shopify. And then really, Shopify is a catalyst for future enhancements and growth because you can move so much faster than a lot of the platforms that I'm replatforming away from, like Magento, like WooCommerce, like BigCommerce. It's a lot easier to work within the Shopify framework once you're live. So that is the most important thing. get live on Shopify, and then make sure that you have a solid roadmap to move quickly after you're there. Um, yeah, I'd say that how I did it was ruthlessly prioritized what it would take for the customer to have a great experience and put that in the MVP, and then stripped out everything else for an upgrade later.
Nice. Okay, let's talk about testing. A/B testing, ABCDEFG testing, so many tests. You've established a program running 20 to 40 A/B tests per month. Most companies are running 2 to 3 tests per month. What's the operational or maybe cultural shift required to go from 3 tests to 40 tests without breaking everything? And honestly, like, why did you do it?
Well, you have to have a certain tech stack to be able to scale testing to that degree. The reason why is because, when you've got traffic coming into your site and then people leave, and conversion rate is so low for almost every brand, especially with a higher AUR product, you're literally leaving money on the table. You're just bleeding out money. So if you think about every dollar that you spend to drive people to the site, and if you can even increase their conversion rate by 1%, that's a massive revenue impact on a business that's doing $100 million a year. And so every bit of the experience really counts in terms of, getting that efficiency that you need. And so that's the reason why. So, like 20 to 40 tests is really helping create a strong flywheel effect that will make a huge impact to the business over time. So, that's the impetus on why. But what's super important to be able to accomplish this is having the right tech stack. So, with Shopify specifically, a lot of the CRO tools like Optimizely is a really popular one, don't allow you to have so many tests running at one time. You just start to split the traffic too many ways. You're not getting the confidence, and it's not productive. But when you move to a headless environment, which is what I took this particular brand to, is headless, then you can actually start to truly split the traffic and run tests that are outside of like Shopify's black box, because the headless site essentially sits on top of the Shopify backend. And so that was kind of like the tech stack that allowed me to be able to scale that way. And I had an awesome team who really like turned over every rock and had a lot of curiosity about the product and the human experience, like going throughout the site from checkout or from homepage to purchase. And I think having a team that is really curious, really motivated, is asking questions, and that's not afraid to take chances. Like, what if we did something crazy and remove the add to cart button on the listing page, but we did this instead? You have to be willing to take some of those chances to really find meaningful change. But the tech stack really helped enable the scale. So making sure, if that's a priority, that you have the right ecosystem is important.
Yeah, I love that. Do you mind if we drill down on that flywheel, like what it looks like, right? So you've got the tests, let's say 40 tests ran for a month or a week or however long you determined was the appropriate amount. What does the flywheel look like, right? You probably start to see patterns, and then what do you do with those patterns?
So what was great about this approach is because again it was on this headless environment, we were able to just turn things on and like leave them on. So like the test was already building out the actual execution. And so out of the 40 tests, maybe you have 5 that win. And it would be something like that, which again just shows the importance of scale, because if you were doing that same amount of tests over 6 months and you only had 5 winners over 6 months, that's really hard to see a significant difference, especially because some of the tests are going to take you backwards during that time. So failing fast and failing forward is a mantra I generally like, and it works especially well in A/B testing world. So, but that flywheel, when you're like, oh, there's 5 test wins here, we're turning them all on, we're pivoting these 3 tests, and we're shutting off the rest. Like that's basically how it was every sprint. So we would basically take like, that's good enough, move forward. And sometimes it was a brand decision. So maybe the test was flat, but you like the experience better. So there were a lot of decisions like that too. But when you start to stack that up month over month, and all of a sudden in 4 months, instead of having maybe one win, you've got 20 or 30, that's meaningful to the customer experience. And so much of it was around product discovery. It's very difficult for consumers to find everything that you offer, especially a company like Alex and Ani, where you have thousands of products. How do you get the customer to the right place? And there were a lot of discovery changes that were built into the testing process. So how can we introduce the customer to other categories or categories that people also bought from. That was super critical. And also an overlooked part of retention in general. If you have a customer that buys multiple things from your business, there's a much higher propensity that they'll come back. And some products have a higher repeat rate than others. So maybe they buy earrings more frequently than they buy bracelets. But bracelets is your core product, but they might refresh their earring selection more, for example. A rifle, a really easy one, is like pens, getting pens in front of consumers because that's a high repeat item that they buy over and over again. Not a huge profit driver, but great for getting customers to come back.
Quick call out. This one's super relevant because Rachel just talked about creative automation and AI agents feeding Meta's content engine. And that is exactly the type of infrastructure we help D2C and e-commerce teams build. Two things depending on where you are at right now. First, if you're building out your AI marketing strategy and you want a framework to follow, download the Scale framework. It's free. Scale stands for Systems Audit, Content Guardrails, Automation with Checkpoints, and LLM Discoverability, and finally, Evidence-Based Measurement. It's a 5-part system. Go get it for free at cac-media.com/pod. And if you're past the strategy and you're just like ready to move now, the AI Modernization Jumpstart is a new offering we have. It's a 2-week CMO-led engagement by Rachel or someone else on our team, and we audit your marketing tech stack, identify the highest impact AI moves for your specific business, and hand you 5 prioritized recommendations plus a step-by-step blueprint to get your first AI workflow running. Flat fee, 2 weeks, done. Learn more at cac-media.com/pod. Both links are in the show notes. Back to Rachel. You've led digital for billion-dollar beauty brands, MAC, Estee Lauder, but you've also scaled startups. You've worked on licensed product lines like Harry Potter, Disney Barbie, and direct-to-consumer exclusives that went from like 200K to 16 million, I believe. So here's
Yes.
the question. I mean, that's like wow in both areas. So what do legacy brands get right about product strategy that direct-to-consumer native brands completely miss, and vice versa?
I think legacy brands have such a easier path to collaborations. So collaborate, like they're sought after in terms of licensing collaborations. And so you can kind of command the room. Like at MAC, at Estee Lauder, they have such a big portfolio, $14 billion portfolio, that it is so much easier to make those connections. I think that in the case of legacy brands, you just have to be really strategic about the market that you're trying to get in front of and what that will do for your brand. And I remember like we had a launch at MAC for Cruella de Vil, and it was right when PETA was protesting testing product on animals in the cosmetics industry. So like that was a PR nightmare. So we pulled back a lot on that launch. And so the decision isn't really should we do it? It's making sure that you're partnering with the right licensing partners, the right collaborations, the right people who are going to do a good job, like communicating to your customers and I guess resonating with your customer. And that is definitely a skill. And I think on the flip side of that, legacy brands do not move fast enough. They do not move scrappy enough. It is so difficult to get a new product launch through an ecosystem that big that you miss all of the market trends. So if there is a really great like TikTok partnership that you could lean into or collaboration, you're years out. They might not matter the same way that they do today.
Yeah.
So I think that's the advantage actually of smaller brands is if you really know your customer and have it dialed in, then there's so much opportunity to partner with small mom and pop businesses and people love rooting for them or local artists. Like a couple great examples, even though Merrell is really more of that legacy brand, we did go down the path of a lot of like local and small collaborations. So artists that drew the Rainbow Mountains, and then we put that on one of our best-selling silhouettes, and that was fire. It took off and drove millions of dollars in a matter of weeks. Or, a local brewery. We knew our customer liked to go on the trail and drink beer. That was a customer insight. And so we translated that into how can we partner with like local breweries, and we picked Dogfish Head and we made a special Dogfish Head like shoe that was, again, like I'm one of our favorite trail runners, and it was also fire and it sold out. And we bought intentionally low quantity, so it felt really special and niche, but taking those consumer insights and then finding a partnership that is at your scale. There's so many people willing to collaborate now that there's no reason why a small business can't find the right partner to reach new audiences. And I
I
think
love
like
that.
that's the advantage.
Here is the line from Rachel I want you to carry out of this episode. Most brands think about retention in terms of sending more communications, but it's actually about sending fewer messages with higher intent. That's the whole retention game right now. Not more, better. Every message should be relevant. Every touch point earning its place. And she's right that the operational infrastructure to get there, the templatization, the ruthless prioritization is where most lean teams get stuck. And her P&L lesson is one I want every founder to hear. Revenue at all costs is not a strategy. It is a margin problem waiting to happen. The CMOs who understand how spend flows all the way through to EBITDA make a functionally different decision. Rachel is one of those people. Rachel is a fractional on my team and one of the sharpest performance marketing minds I know. If your D2C business deserves better numbers, she is the person I would call. Share this with a founder or CEO whose e-commerce growth has plateaued or whose ROAS has them losing sleep. Growing a company is lonely work, and they will be really glad you thought of them and sent this. I'm Corinne Cavanaugh. This is Lightning Speed.